Your move, creep.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hey kids, welcome to Grumpy Nostalgia, the Second Look Cinema Podcast, the show where we go back to the blockbuster new release wall of our memory, grab a copy off the shelf, pop it in the old VCR, and see what time has done to it. I'm Justin, that's Mike.
Good afternoon, Dr. Detroit.
And we're here to help you navigate all the landmines littered down memory lane. Mike, we are finally back.
It's been a while. I figured you were not going to come back after the Just Stop Oil protest you were doing in Europe.
My secret's out. Yeah, it's been a while. We kind of apologize. Yeah, we apologize to our audience. That was a little bit longer than we were expecting to be out. But hey, sometime life gets in the way and whatever. So we had a lot of stuff we had to get done, and we didn't really plan out the whole thing very well. But that doesn't matter because we're finally back in our studios and we're recording, and we can't wait to get some more fabulous content out to our wonderful fans. So thank you for your patience, and it's good to be back.
Are we better than ever, or are we just back?
Just like the song says, Mike. We're back, and we're better. Maybe a little older, not much wiser.
Right.
Gross. Hey, before we get too far ahead, we really want to thank the ladies at Secondhand Nostalgia for filling in for us for one of those weeks. Emmy and Janice had the nerve to put up a companion podcast to our dumb little show, and they covered Twister, one of our very first episode, but they covered it with a very unique perspective, a Gen Z female one, which we were just completely blown away by, which was kind of the point. I thought it was really clever, their take on that movie. So we hope that they continue to put out more content so we can afford to take more extended vacations. So again, the Secondhand Nostalgia team, ladies, thank you very much for filling in for us. We really appreciate that.
Hear, hear.
Yeah. So, Mike, it's finally getting a little bit cold. We're kind of getting into the holiday season down where we live, but it took a long time. It's been very warm here. Kind of can't really get in the season of the holiday, can you?
Of course. There's no white Christmas for us.
No. In fact, this muggy December weather has been giving me a case of the horribles, Mike.
Oh, no.
But it's finally getting cool, and we're finally cozying into our long winter sleep, and we are back in the studios, and we went over quite a few things in the off time, talking about what we wanted to do, and we thought the best way to ease back in was to pick the dumbest, silliest movie we could find. So our transition back to the real world here is Mike is going to be RoboCop from 1997.
Hooray. Nice.
Nice,
Thank you
right?
for picking a nice Paul Verhoeven movie. I could not wait to watch this one again.
Well, the conventional thinking would be, it's like the award season stuff, so you'd pick like a nice, Oscar bait movie, but no, we kind of went the other way. But this one was just, wow, it's a lot of fun. So I think we've been away long enough, so let's just get to it, right? So RoboCop was released in July 17th in 1987. It was directed by show favorite Paul Verhoeven. We covered one of his movies earlier, Total Recall, which we encourage you guys to go back. We covered that show a few months ago. That was a really fun one. But he was in the running for this after David Cronenberg turned it down. It was written by this guy named Edward Neumeier, who wrote Starship Troopers as well, Mike, with Paul Verhoeven.
Love that guy.
Yeah, really. Paul Verhoeven, speaking of Paul Verhoeven, he was generally hated by the entire cast and crew. He's got a bit of a temper, a bit of an eccentric, Mike.
Maybe slightly misogynistic, is maybe just a tad.
Yeah, given the tone of some of his work, I kind of get it. The script had been around since really the early 1980s. It had been rejected by studios for years and years and years. And then finally, a little upstart studio, Orion Pictures, decided to roll the dice. They started casting, and some of the, we'll get to the cast here in a minute, Mike. But this was a difficult movie to find a director for and to find a cast or even to get made. But we're certainly glad it did get made. So part of the challenge was finding the right cast. So, Mike, you kind of want to walk us through the principal players?
Yeah, this is kind of eclectic cast. You had relative unknowns, no major stars other than Ronnie Cox, who he's wow. You talk about a supernova in a galaxy of twinkling stars. Anyway, Peter Weller, our star, eponymous RoboCop in this movie. The only other thing I could even remember him in was as a villain in the 24 series. Other than that, the only time I ever see him is on the History Channel, which is kind of, I did not know this, that he was a professor of ancient history and a very well-rounded guy in as far as education world. I think he has like an Ivy League education, but I couldn't remember exactly where he ended up being a professor. I don't know if he's retired. He looks, looks a little old, long in the tooth as now.
Well, to me, he was always going to be Buckaroo Banzai. If you
remember, I see.
In the early '80s.
Yeah, I stay away from that one. I don't know. I think it was the title.
Give it a shot. It's a really good one.
Buckaroo. I have heard good things about it, but yeah. So other than that, I couldn't. He kind of came and went for me as far as an actor.
Yeah.
Was he even in RoboCop 2, or did he bow out after this?
Yeah,
one?
yeah.
He was in the second one.
Yeah,
okay.
He was in 2. Okay. He might have been in 3 too. I can't remember. But
I couldn't remember 3. Yeah, I kind of shut the door after 1. So anyway, along with him, his cop partner Nancy Allen. She the only thing I remember about her was I think she was married to Brian De Palma, and she was in a really good movie called Blowout, which was kind of a sleeper movie with John Travolta that De Palma.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah. It's the second time I've mentioned that movie. I'm like, oh yeah, but she was the female lead in that one, and she was kind of I'm going to say a star of the 70s and 80s, and I think she was even in Dressed to Kill, another De Palma movie. But other than that, I think she kind of retired from acting in the late 80s or early 90s, and I couldn't tell you where she ended up after this movie. Ronnie Cox, he is our evil villain. I'm sure Verhoeven just said, hey man, I got another movie. I want you to practice your evil villainry in this movie so that you can be the same guy in Total Recall a few years later. And it worked. Yep. He's great. He's playing evil head of a corporation.
I was really thrilled to see both his shoulders in place for this one.
At least he knew how to luckily there was no video screen phones he could use in this one. And then kind of round out the cast in this, you had Miguel Ferrer, who is another kind of B star, who's best known as George Clooney's half brother. One movie I remember him in was Revenge with Kevin Costner, another kind of sleeper movie, but fantastic in that movie. Other than that, a lot of bit parts and side parts. Then you had the bad guys, Kurtwood Smith, who everybody would know as the dad in the 70s show, who plays a awesome villain in this movie. My goodness.
Oh,
I would have loved to have seen him.
Creep,
yeah, I would have loved to have seen him in other stuff as the same guy in this movie because, he was amazing. Just this, it's kind of like the Alan Rickman character in Die Hard. He gets these great lines in there, and you remember the villain almost as much as you remember the RoboCop character in this movie.
Yeah.
Then one of his little henchmen was the guy that Paul McCrane is the actor's name, but he always plays a sniveling little guy in everything I see him in. I remember him from ER. Yeah. He was one of the doctors in there. It was kind of a sniveling little jerk in that movie, and I guess his comeuppance in that show. And in the fun fact! I just remember this. Justin, after I watched this movie, I named 2 pet fish, Lewis and Murphy, just to throw that at you.
Oh, very cool.
There you go.
Very cool.
This movie had a real impression on me. And then my cast cameo of the podcast this time is Lisa Gibbons. And you might know that name from Entertainment Weekly. She appears in this movie not as Lisa Gibbons, but as a TV reporter, of course. But she's a proud alumni of Clemson University and one of South Carolina's own. So I wanted to give her a shout out.
Hold that tiger.
That's there right. There's there's the bulk of your cast.
All right. Well, thank you, Mike. Good job. Just a few notes on that cast. Paul Weller got the role because he fit in the suit. That's one of the reasons. This was originally offered to Lance Henriksen.
Oh wow!
but he turned it down.
Hmm.
Rutger Hauer and Michael Ironside were also considered for the role,
course.
but they were too big for the costume. Along those lines, Arnold was also considered, Arnold Schwarzenegger. But this is one of Arnold's favorite movies of all time, and this is what the motivation for him wanting to work with Verhoeven in Total Recall.
Oh,
so
okay.
we have thank you very much.
Nice, yeah, really.
So because of his slender frame, Peter Weller accepted the role. He turned down the lead in King Kong Lives to do this movie, Mike.
Oh, wow.
Which is I think
Smart
Linda Hamilton's in
man.
that too.
He is. I told you he was a college professor, so maybe he's smarter than we think.
Yeah. A bit of a drama queen, a bit of pretentious. He was a method actor, and he insisted to stay in character through the whole time. And the director said, "No, I'm not going to do that." Nor did any of his co-stars, but he insisted anyway. This came out in the same weekend as Jaws 4, Mike.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
It had to compete with another superhero movie, more or less. Superman 4 came out a week after.
Wow, 4 sequels. That's crazy.
Yeah.
No wonder RoboCop did pretty well.
If you remember, in a world pre-Marvel, you didn't get a lot of these like superhero type movies, and it was kind of a dead genre. And this gets a lot of credit for kind of like revitalizing, revamping the sci-fi superhero type genre because it was kind of a dead thing. It didn't really exist.
If you saw, what was the bad guy, Solar Boy or whatever? Who was the Superman 4 villain? It was like Sunman or something.
Nuclear Boy or something.
Yeah, after seeing that guy, you want to go to something else besides superhero movies after seeing that. Jeez.
I think the only superhero that had blow-dried feathered hair. But we digress. A couple other notes about this movie. It was all the computer special effects were done on a Commodore Amiga computer at the time, which I thought was cool. Richard Nixon, when he was still alive, helped it do some commercials for this movie and some promotion. He donated his salary to the Boy Scouts of America, but he was paramount in kind of promoting this movie. This movie is generally regarded as a kind of a take on or a reaction to like Reagan era policies and things, government policies, things like that. Kind of a take on that. So yeah, he was involved in that. All the police cars in the movie are made of they're the Ford Taurus.
They weren't the SUX. I love that.
They were not the SUX 6000s. No, they were just a standard issue Ford Taurus. I think spray painted matte black just to look cooler. Right?
Yeah.
But, yeah. So this was set in Detroit, but if you look very closely, you notice a lot of the landmarks. It essentially was shot in Dallas, Texas. Mike.
Okay. Yeah.
The scenery. Yeah.
I knew Detroit a little bit.
Yeah.
I was like, no, this isn't. I couldn't place what city it was. Did they ever specifically say the year, or is it just near future?
Yeah, it's allegedly set, and you'll love this, set in 1991. Like,
oh, gee. Why? Just 4 years in the future when they did this.
Yeah.
No,
do you feel it was set in the future 30 years ago today?
Oh my God. Okay.
How old do you feel, Mike?
Jeez.
Yeah. So whatever. The kill count was 34, Mike, and the F word count was 35. So they have a nice little even ratio there. Surprising nobody with the Paul Verhoeven movie. My favorite tie-in with this movie, and me and Mike are admittedly, regrettably, old school wrestling fans. And Mike, I don't know if you remember, but the old days of the WCW.
Oh yeah.
There was a pay-per-view called Capital Combat, during which RoboCop appears.
Oh wow!
I don't know if it was Peter Weller, but the character RoboCop actually rescues Sting from the clutches of the Four Horsemen. This was a real thing, and of course the wrestling fans ate it up. But it's generally regarded as one of the most embarrassing cross promotions in wrestling history. That's saying something for wrestling. But yeah, there you go. Just victim of the times, Mike.
When you love to see Ric Flair figure 4 RoboCop, that would have been awesome.
I would love that. Harvey Ray smashed his face in. So this was indicative of the time, Mike. So this was 1987. There's a couple of interesting things about 1987. We were both 16, right? Driving around. ABC's Full House premiered this year.
Wow.
Right? Embedding all of our inherent love of the Olsen twins and Dave Coulier. Gasoline was 89 cents a gallon, Mike.
Oh, the days. Wow.
This was the year the Fox network premiered.
The Simpsons came out right after it.
Yeah, so we had Trace. Yeah, that year they were in the Tracy Ullman show as a sketch, and then the next thing you know, they've been on TV ever since, which is pretty cool. I kind of checked out. It's one of my favorite series ever, but I kind of checked out after like 12 seasons. I know they're like 32 or something now. I don't remember. The phrase or the ad campaign, "This is your brain on drugs," that came out in 1987. Mike, everybody remembers that.
Maybe I've never stopped enjoying fried eggs since.
In case you've done a lot of drugs, you probably don't remember. Music was really bad, Mike. I'm going to give you a sampling of what was on the jukebox in old 1987. We had "I Want to Dance with Somebody" by Whitney Houston. Yeah. Crack is whack. We all know that.
She came to Carowinds in 87 in the summer. That was a big concert for us.
Did she really?
Oh, wow. Yeah, man. That was big.
Look at that. Yeah. Wow. We had Living on a Prayer with Bon Jovi.
Okay.
Yeah. Starship. Nothing's going to stop us now by Starship.
Yes.
Oh, boy. And then
Billy Ocean. I bet there's a Billy Ocean song in there somewhere.
I didn't check that out. I was kind of running out of steam. Okay. "Alone" by Heart was also the top song during the. So there's 4 songs that I could pretty much live without, but they're all there, Mike. So
what's wrong with you? You don't like the Wilson sisters? What's wrong with you, man? Come on.
Just pretty popcorn. I was still hanging on to the decline of the metal generation.
Yeah.
Grunge was a couple years away, and not a lot of rock bands back then, but there's a few punk bands I was still hanging on to.
It was a nuclear winter there for about 5 or 6 years, wasn't there? After
it was
alternative music kind of went away, and then you wait for flannel shirts to come back in style.
Yeah, we wouldn't see flannel for a couple years, so it was we had to hibernate for a while.
Yeah, it got
87 wasn't the biggest year for movies, but he did have a couple of big ones there. This the year of Beverly Hills Cop, Platoon, and I think RoboCop was somewhere around 14th or 15th on the box office list that year. So not a big hit, but
is it one of those movies? Is it one of those movies that got? Because I remember I didn't even I knew we usually talk about when we first saw it, but I didn't even see it in the theater. I saw it on a VHS tape at Clemson when I was my freshman year, and I remember all of us kind of gathering around to watch it. Us and some of the dorm mates were like, "Wow, this movie's great," and we just loved it. But this was over a year after the movie came out that we saw it.
Yeah, I was the same way. I couldn't be bothered to see this in the theater for some reason, but I did see it on VHS. I think a year and a half later, like you did. Yeah. And again, the same thing. It was I think around our freshman year in college, and this movie screams 25 guys in a dorm room watching.
Oh yeah.
This is perfect. It's perfect for everybody.
Yeah.
Right? So,
oh my God. Yeah. The perfect balance of violence and machismo. I mean, gee whiz, this movie had it all.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, speaking of that, let's get into more detail on how much this movie actually had, Mike. So we're in the theater. We've got our ticket ready. You ready to go?
Let's do it.
All right. Hit the button, Mike. All right, so our movie kind of opens up with this kind of faux news report, kind of like the infotainment channel. And you right away think, "Hey, did I rent the right movie?" but it's these infotainment type news anchors kind of going over the top stories of the day.
It's funny how it's funny how he uses the same trope in Starship Trooper years later. With the kind of the news of the day being shown to you, like, oh wow, what a great way to present your exposition. Here you go.
Well, I can actually think it's a little bit clever, I think, in a way, because he did this in to a lesser degree in Total Recall. He really did it in Starship Troopers, but it's kind of a satire, and it kind of adds layers to the story, and it shows you kind of the paradigm at the time, what the people's thinking was, and how they were kind of dismissive of things, and the commercialism of everything, and all that. The Reagan era stuff. So it kind of added some insensitivity to violence and commercialism and all that kind of crap.
He's able to create a universe through the exposition of like these.
That's exactly
bubbleheads on the TV.
Yeah. So the news channel gives a little featurette about this organization called OCP, which is also an anagram for cop. If you're clever like me, you pick that. But they focus on Dick James, played by the aforementioned Ronnie Cox, and talking about how.
Hey man, Dick Jones, not James. That's don't get
Dick
my
Jones.
Name.
Oh
yeah, don't get my name.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I actually wrote down Jones. I don't know where James came from, but Dick Jones, played by Ronnie Cox, is this like executive guy working for OCP, and he has the. We'll get to him in a minute. Essentially establishing that Detroit is a bad town.
Oh, it's a shit. Yeah,
and OCP is this big corporate conglomerate that wants to kind of take over. So then we kind of cut to Alex Murphy, played by Peter Weller, who shows up on his first day in Detroit. He had worked some suburban areas, and he got a transfer to do some real work. Kind of focuses on his first day on the job, and meanwhile, they cut back to the infotainment thing that's playing, and they talk about this guy named Clarence Boddicker, and he's this bad guy played by the That 70s Show dad. And the rap on him is that he's killed 31 cops and really created a lot of stress for Detroit because the cops wanted to strike and all that kind of thing. So there's a lot of hostility, and it's kind of a ticking time bomb in the Detroit urban area. So as Peter Weller walks into the police station, he's met by Nancy Allen, his partner Lewis, who's pretty hot in an 80s sort of way. They kind of meet up, and yeah. But she's kind of a badass because the first, but her first thing is she comes in and sorts out an unruly arrested guy that some of the men can't contain. She comes in, just does a couple of karate kicks and takes care of him. So establishes she's kind of a badass. So we cut back to the OCP boardroom, which is kind of like an assemblage of like all the regional governors of the empire of Star Wars. They're sitting around this giant table. And at the head of the table is the owner of OCP, which they only refer to as the old man.
The old man, yeah. I love that.
The old man. And there's two kind of like capos in this division. One is Ronnie Cox, who's developed this kind of robot cop, who's not the traditional RoboCop yet, but he's built this kind of like fully autonomous robot that's called Ed 209, which is kind of a frumpy looking, toadstool looking robot, right?
Do they ever say what is Ed an acronym for anything, or they just kind of I didn't catch that when I was watching it. I just thought it was funny.
Something.
It's like I just love that. Immediately you hear the name Ed and you think, okay, ineffectual.
It really breeds fear, doesn't it?
For a robot cop, okay.
But the plan is the old man wants to. Detroit has gone bankrupt. They refer to it as Old Detroit. So he decides he's going to rebuild Detroit. His corporation OCP is going to rebuild Detroit as a company called Delta City, and they're going to tear down Detroit, and then the law and order is going to be kept by Ed, which is kind of the stop motion robot. So to impress upon the entire board how effective Ed is, they bring Ed in to the boardroom, and they randomly pick some haphazard volunteer to take a gun and like point it at Ed. So this guy named Mr. Kinney grabs a gun and so all dressed in their best 80s suits, right? My puffy hair.
Yes.
Yeah. So he to demonstrate the effectiveness of Ed, they asked Mr. Kinney to approach him with a gun, and of course Ed has a glitch.
No.
And he doesn't recognize that Mr. Kinney surrenders the gun, and he starts growling, Mike, which I thought was interesting. Ed starts growling, and poor Mr. Kinney ends up getting shot like 700 times.
Yeah,
right in front of the
Ed believes in overkill. Yeah,
he sure. Yeah, so apparently they had to cut 2 seconds out of this shooting scene to get an R rating. So I can only imagine what those 2 seconds were.
I thought
but for
I
Mr.
remember
Kidding,
that's the one thing I remember about this movie was there was like a I'm not going to say a director's cut, but there was like a version of it that had
there is
a lot more gratuitous violence to it that they had to like kind of remove.
It's hard to imagine.
I know.
It's hard to imagine more violence in this movie. So, but it's out there. So anyway, and again, kind of representative of the time that's supposed to be implied here. They don't really take too much of a guy just getting murdered in the boardroom. They start to panic, and then Weasley, little Bob Morton, who's played by Miguel Ferrer. He's kind of like the third in command next to Ronnie Cox, and he's a sniveling little opportunist. And he has a backup plan because he was hoping to get his own contract with his version, which he calls RoboCop, Mike. And he takes the opportunity after this guy's been murdered to go talk to the old man right in front of Ronnie Cox and says, "Hey, you know what? This was a bust, but if you're interested, I have something that might work." And he's talking about the RoboCop program. And the old man, of course, completely dismissive of the carnage he's just seen, says, "Hey, you give me a presentation in 20 minutes." And then he takes off, and then Ronnie Cox left looking at him, glaring.
Yeah.
There's one thing you can establish here is you don't want to piss off Ronnie Cox, Mike.
No.
You can just tell. So, Mr. Morton's and his buddies all get together. Says, "Okay, we got to get a presentation." The guy says, "What do we need?" We said, "Well, we just need a volunteer." So the idea is that it's kind of a cyborg, right? They just need a human body that can be ready. So that kind of leads us to our next scene, of course, where we go back to the quote unquote volunteer, a little telegraphing there, Mike, where Alex Murphy and his partner are driving around on a suspected call. And they've heard that there's been a robbery, and they're chasing these bad guys in a van towards the old mill. There's always an old mill at these places.
Or factory or mill. Yeah, there's got to be some kind of abandoned place to go to.
Right. So the bad guys in this case are Clarence Boddicker, the 70s guy, his gang. So they lead them to this old mill, and they kind of scatter, and then Alex Murphy and his partner Lewis get separated, and of course Murphy walks in where he shouldn't be. And kind of gets caught, and then he tries to arrest one of the guys, and they all kind of ambush him. And these guys don't like cops, Mike, obviously.
Apparently they have a record of not liking cops.
Yeah, they killed about 30 of them.
Yeah.
So Nancy Allen gets pushed off a railing and gets knocked out, and so she's unable to help, but he gets stuck, and the gang kind of coalesces and gets together, and they take turns like kind of shooting off body parts here. I'm like, this is horrible violence at the time. He shoots off Alex Murphy's hand, and they just take turns, shooting through his body armor, and then ultimately shoot him and kill him. And the camera kind of cuts to black at that point. And then as it kind of comes back, you have this kind of point of view perspective where you're kind of looking through the world through Murphy's eyes. And it's kind of like this digital image, like he's become some sort of robot. And you start seeing like an evac team and a medical team kind of programming him and, doing all the, the Commodore 64 graphics in his head. And it's implied that he's become some sort of robot. And they kind of pan out and you see, Alex Murphy has become RoboCop. Mike kind of became cyborged. There's a little bit of, organic material from his body, but he's mostly a big robot with
he's titanium laminated with
Kevlar. Laminated with Kevlar, right? Very cool, right?
Yeah.
So they take the new robot down to the police station, and the police are like, "Whoa, what the heck is that?" Right? And they take him down to the shooting range, and he's got some neat little gun that just kind of blows up everything, kind of like a handheld pistol Uzi, and all the police are impressed by that. And at the end of his shooting range, Nancy Allen walks over and sees that RoboCop does this little twirl with his gun, which is indicative of something she saw with Alex Murphy earlier on in there, where he said he he used to do this thing for his son to look like a TV star, TJ Laser, Mike.
I forgot about that.
It had nothing to do with TJ Hooker, I'm sure. But he adopted this little gun twirl because his kid thought the TV character was cool, so he did it. And she starts to connect the dots that, hey, maybe this, what's going on? RoboCop might be the guy I used to know here. Something's weird. So, but they leave that to progress later. So they kind of introduce their cool little toy, and the middle of the movie is really just a montage of.
Oh yeah, that's my favorite part.
RoboCop going downtown and taking care of some baddies.
Yes.
So he breaks up some robberies ultra violently. My favorite one, Mike, is when he goes to City Hall, when he kills one of the city council guys and he's got the mayor hostage. RoboCop kind of goes in City Hall and reaches through the wall and grabs him, throws him out a window.
Oh yeah.
I don't know, Mike, if you notice the dummy used for the special effect here.
The arms kind of flinging around. Like, yeah, that's a real person there. Yeah.
It looked like you threw a scarecrow out of the his legs akimbo.
Yeah, that one did not work very well.
Yeah, but I always love a bad.
Yeah, my favorite was the lady being like, assaulted by the guy who like holds her in front of him with a gun to her. And RoboCop's able to do a perfect shot through her dress into his groin.
Yeah, that was lovely. Yeah.
I love the like really the compassion of RoboCop where she's like screaming and just in shock, and he's like, Madam, you have suffered an emotional shock. I will recommend a for you.
Yeah, that's the most empathy that's ever shown in this movie, by the way. So.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, but it's really kind of that could have been a headshot, that could have been anything, but that director's choice was to go there, so that says enough. But a lot of these scenes in here kind of gave me that. Remember the movie Superman 2? We covered that about 100 years ago. But the public and how they're kind of comical and all that. I got that vibe. In this movie here.
Yeah, the bystanders are always great in some of these movies.
They're
not. You don't want to delve too deep other than like a surface level. This guy has a toupee, or this guy's trying to preserve his bucket of chicken, or this person's on roller skates.
Yeah,
you have all these kind of like people that are just one note. There you go.
They just kind of dismiss all the violence by making it silly, so you don't have to really care.
Oh yeah.
All right, so as the movie kind of goes into its second act, this is where everything kind of turns, and as at this point, RoboCop's kind of a superhero, and he's kind of a celebrity, and he's on TV and he's showing off for kids and stuff like that. But all the while, he's becoming a little more sentient, and he's starting to remember through his dreams that he had a wife and a kid. He's starting to get some of his identity back, and that's a problem, right? So he ends up running into one of the members from the gang, and he recognizes him and goes back to City Hall, and he has these flashbacks that there's still remnants in his brainwaves that show how he was wronged, and he recognized this as one of the guys that was in the gangs that shot and killed him. So he plugs into the computer and starts looking at all the known accomplices, and now he's turned into, from a detective, he's turned into a vigilante, Mike, and he decides he wants to go out and start taking out these people that killed him,
taking out the bad guys.
This is where it kind of gets, pardon the phrase, air quotes, interesting, because it's another layer. It's not just he's just not a robot. He's like, there's identity here.
Yeah.
It was just kind of cool.
He's tortured by the fact that, as a cop, he's, like you mentioned the guy assaulting the woman. He's not allowed to shoot that guy in the head. He has to injure that guy and disable him, but he can't, his protocol, his directive, and his prime directive is not to kill the bad guy, even though he's wants to so badly, and he gets that human emotion in him to want to get that revenge or actually come after the guys that wronged him.
Well, that's a great segue. That's a great segue, Mike. It's probably a good time to talk about it. So one of the things that that RoboCop has in his programming or his prime directives, and protect and serve, one and all that. But one is there's a secret one there, Mike, that we'll get to in a minute. So he has to maintain his professionalism, but there's a secret one that we'll get to here in a minute. So as he's collecting all these baddies, the people in the gang start to get nervous because they're starting to see that there's a connection here. And he comes across that 70s show dad, right? And he wants to kill him. Obviously, he starts choking him, and then he sees that on the screen and inside his head says that this will violate your prime directive. You can't do it. But he does manage to throw him through 5 glass pane windows, which is pretty cool.
That was good.
But as Clarence is getting the crap kicked out of him, he spills the beans, Mike. He basically does like this Scooby-Doo wrap-up explaining all the things he's done. So it's worth noting here that prior to this, Ronnie Cox, who as a matter of petty revenge, hires that 70s show dad guy to go kill Dr. Morton, the guy that developed RoboCop. So he kills him. And again, another trope that Paul Herman used, he shows the Ronnie Cox on the screen saying, "Hey, I bet you're on your knees now, buddy boy." And I just started having Total Recall flashbacks right away. He says, if you're listening to this, you're about to die. I love that. But he's in cahoots now with the OCP, that 70s show dad. But they also understand that because he spilled the beans, all this is in RoboCop's memory. So they got to figure out a way to kill RoboCop. So OCP decides to do a smear campaign and convince the police station to try to kill RoboCop, and he's not a good guy anymore. Blah blah blah. So it ends up that RoboCop's creator gets killed, and Ronnie Cox is back in the game now. So he takes over, and he's the next guy in line. And RoboCop barely escapes with his life after all the cops try to kill him, and he goes back to that same little mill there, Mike, and he's met with Nancy Allen again, and he takes his face off there, and we get to see Peter Weller's prosthetic face on he takes his eye shield off, and he spends the rest of the movie as Peter's face, Alex Murphy's face. You can see this.
Yeah.
Alex Murphy, thank you. So word gets out through the bad guys, of course, the OCP are pulling the strings, and they release all the guys and give them the firepower they need, because he contracts that 70s show dad to go to kill RoboCop once and for all. So of course, like every other movie in the world, they go back to the mill, right? And at this point, it's just a series of gruesome deaths for all the members of the original crew. Murphy.
What I learned, Justin? I learned to stay away from toxic waste barrels after watching this movie.
So the poor guy gets toxic waste spilled on him. He kind of melts away, right? And he's kind of like, it's not enough that he's gonna die, but he also gets hit by a car and just kind of like,
I swear,
explodes. I guess
if there's one thing Paul Verhoeven knows how to do is creative. He has to be the director of the most creative deaths, of any movies.
Yeah,
you think about Total Recall, where you see Ronnie Cox's head basically explode. Then you think of Starship Troopers. You see a guy have a needle stuck in his head and his brain gets sucked out.
Yeah.
And then you have a movie like this where, hey, let's dump a barrel of toxic waste on you, watch you absolutely melt away. God.
Yeah, and then explode like a water balloon when a car hits it. So. All very subtle artistic choices by the director. Right?
I guess that's what I'm saying. Is these are all.
So yeah.
No.
So Murphy dispatches all the Murphy and his partner kind of kill the gang, and they said, "Well, there's one last thing to do. They got to go after Ronnie Cox, Mike.
Get him."
So they make their way back to the OCP headquarters, and it's guarded by Ed. Ed's back, Mike. And my favorite scene in the movie is just the the total disdain for Ed by RoboCop at this point. He's just had enough. It reminded me of the scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark where Ed is just that swordsman.
He's the twirling swordsman.
Yeah, and RoboCop just shoots him. But what I like best about Ed is he can't move downstairs, right?
No, that's his.
So he falls down. He falls down the stairs, and he starts squealing like a pig. I thought, what the hell? This robot growls like a tiger, but squeals like a pig when threatened. But anyway, they dispatch of Ed, and they go upstairs, and RoboCop goes in and grabs Ronnie Cox, and he plugs into the computer up there and shows the recorded confession by that '70s show dad, and basically fingers Ronnie Cox for all the wrong stuff, and they're all horrified. So Ronnie Cox takes the old man hostage and holds a gun to his head and says, "Let me out! Let me out of here!" Or the old guy gets. And all the while, the prime directive thing is showing up in RoboCop's head. But apparently, there's a fourth directive that says anybody. Any employee of OCP was immune to any kind of prosecution. At which point the old man says, "Hey, Dick, you're fired.
You're fired."
and the minute he's released, he's terminated. RoboCop terminates him
with extreme impunity. I guess.
Well, the old man gives the guy an elbow in the solar plexus.
Oh yes, my God,
the weakest, most ineffectual hit ever, and then runs for it. And then RoboCop shoots him about 700 times, and then they had this really horrible special effect. There's basically a puppet of Ronnie. A stop motion puppet of Ronnie Cox falling out of the building, which, what the heck was that shot, Mike?
Why was that needed? I mean,
why did he have 7-foot-long arms and legs?
They used the same dummy from earlier.
It was awful. It looked like a pipe cleaner man falling out.
It did look.
But anyway,
let's just say he wasn't going to be home in time for cornflakes.
He was not. But at the end, the old man shows his gratitude to Murphy. He says, "Nice shooting, son. What's your name?" And then,
there you go. Ray Skywalker.
RoboCop says Murphy, just like everybody in the theater did, right? So, and
go.
then the RoboCop credits kick in, and the movie's over. The end.
The end.
So wow,
a fun ride, a real
really fun.
Yeah, I mean, even as gratuitous and as stupid as some of the special effects are, it's still it is what it is.
I think this, even with the lack in special effects, this movie still kind of holds up in a weird way, and I can't really quantify it or put my finger on it, but it was still kind of fun to watch. If I asked a millennial to watch this movie, he'd think it was horrible, but it's just I thought it was fun.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. It did its job. There's no silly side plots. There's no political backstabbing. The bad guys right away. You know the good guys right away. I mean, there's no gray. It is one of those movies I like because it's all black and white. Sometimes I like shades of gray kind of plots, but this was like
right. Nope.
Here you go.
You didn't need to think too much.
No.
It was just a very, very tight 104 minutes. So let's go to awards and accolades, and we'll kind of go through the Grumpy Meter real quick. So this movie had a budget of $13 million. It made 8 of that back on its opening weekend. Nice. But ended up making $53 million domestically. Again, back in 1987, that's a pretty good haul. Nice. The interesting thing about this, Mike, it made $708 in New Zealand.
All right.
It was its only international release. This was in 2021 as a re-release, but it made $708 in New Zealand, Mike. So there you go. I don't know what that means. It's just what I found out. Where this movie did really clean up is on the aftermarket VHS and Laserdisc. rentals and sales. It made $24 million back on that. So a lot of people really like this movie. It was nominated for 3 Academy Awards. It actually did win 1 for sound editing.
Nice.
Must have been the pig squeal. Must have really sold
the growling
voters. Yeah, but it lost for sound and film editing.
I was going to say special effects or body double usage. It probably failed in that.
Yeah,
a little bit.
But the surprise here was for editing. Like usually movies like this don't usually get looked at for something as prestigious as film editing, but. Kind of going back to our point, it was a very tight 104 minutes. Every scene in there was needed for the plot. Remember those? Remember plots? But it had one. So it gave birth to 2 sequels, RoboCop 2 and you want to guess the next one, RoboCop 3.
Nah.
RoboCop 2 was directed by Frank Miller, and it's really kind of a campy classic. I personally like RoboCop 2 a lot.
Okay.
RoboCop 3 is trash and it's garbage and no one should bother with it. But RoboCop 2 had some weird performances and some interesting subplots in it. Again, it was an HBO staple a lot too. Every kid saw that 100 times. It gave birth to several TV series, animated and live action. It's been a staple in the video game industry forever. So this movie has had quite a long legacy. It was needlessly remade in 2014.
Yes. Who was in that?
Greg Kinneman. Kinneman played
Okay, I forgot about that. The Swedish guy.
Had a different origin story slightly. Gary Oldman, Michael Keaton, Samuel L. Jackson, Jackie Earle Haley. I mean, it had a good cast.
Wow.
But $100 million movie. I think it only made $28 million here in the States. I think it eventually recouped its money overseas, but no one really knows about it or talks about it. You say RoboCop, you're not thinking about that when you're thinking about,
It's like Total Recall, like who remembers Colin Farrell in Total Recall as opposed to Arnold Schwarzenegger in the original? It's just why they bother even doing it.
Or other movies like Point Break and Footloose and other forgotten needless sequels that no one really cares about or wants. So it kind of cleaned up there. Let's just go to our first watch and our Grumpy meter. So I'll go first real quick. I think the first time I saw this, like as we alluded to earlier, was a VH rental about a year and a half later. Yeah. Probably a little Laserdisc rental for me. And, I just, being at that age, I was probably 19 when I saw it. I just, this movie's made for the 18-year-old male. It's perfect. So I really loved it. I probably gave it a 4 out of 5 at the time. Watching again later as a grumpy old guy, I started to appreciate the satire and, the Reagan era commentary and the there's layers to the story here that I didn't really see the first time, which I thought were kind of clever. So I just keep it right where it is. It didn't really go down much or go up higher, but I still appreciate this, maybe a little bit more, but I give it a 4 out of 5 on my second watch. So just a really enjoyable movie, Mike. Stupid, without a doubt. I'm not proud that I like it. I do. But it kept me entertained, and right now the bar is so low that kind of still wins. So, Mike, what did you think?
You know what? Just let's play back what you just said and record it for me. Saw it about a year after it came out. Didn't even want to bother with it at the theater. Watched it at a dorm, like I said, my freshman year there, and of course, if you watch it with a bunch of guys who are like, growling and making pig sounds, kind of like Ed. We all loved it. It was fantastic. And, at least 4 stars. I saw it then. And I had never been to Detroit before, but I went there a few years after I saw this movie. And hell, if it did not look like the movie. At that time, you went to downtown Detroit. You did not want to stay there very long, except for maybe the Renaissance Tower. And other than that, you go outside that area and you're in just like, you're in the same mill and factory you saw in this movie. It was crazy how bad it is. Yeah. I know they've cleaned up their image a little bit, so But after, like I said, after watching this movie again, I'm like, that looked like Detroit in the 80s and 90s. So I got the same feeling watching it this time. Was this is just like we said, this is a good movie, tight, pulls no punches on violence, which that's not. Nothing that we haven't seen in recent movies, but
I don't think I have the stomach to watch the director's uncut version of this. I don't think I want to see it. This was enough.
That would be a little tough, But as far as just the basic plot of the movie, it's one of those rare movies where there's not one person that you said, "That's wow, why in the hell was that guy in that movie, or why was she in that movie?" I mean, it was really well done. So 4 stars for me again, easily.
All right. So I guess the only flaw this movie might have it was, the ineffectual villain, right? Ed. Ed sucked.
That did suck.
So, but he, and he was promoted. Ed was really part of the promotion as like the villain in this movie, if you recall. Wow. They realized that Ed was so terrible that they had to have like Ronnie Cox be the bad guy instead, do the heavy lifting for villainy. But that got us thinking. In the history of movies, more often than not, you get a lot of ineffectual villains, Mike. Really bad villains. So we thought for our segment, you just made the list, pal. We take a look at our own picks of movies we've seen, and oddly enough, Mike, I think you could probably populate this with 10 to 12 at least. But let's pick 3. Let's pick 3 of our most famous ineffectual villains from movies, TVs, whatever. And why don't you go first?
Well, our first one is a very, very familiar face. You might know him as for his skills at Zoom calls and turning his head and being able to keep up with his henchmen via text and Skype. It's Ronnie Cox as Velos Cohagen in the movie Total Recall. This guy was basically the ruler of Mars in this movie. And he had total control of this planet, who comes in, who comes off. And his only concern is keeping whatever the hell they were mining. I can't remember what it was. But keeping
Iridium.
What was it? Duridium?
Iridium.
Okay. Keeping the free flow of iridium, coming in and out. And that's how he made boatloads of money. Why in the hell would you have tourists coming to Mars and staying in a hotel right next to your valuable mountainous mine right there?
That's a good point.
And it made no sense to me. Not only the fact that people were coming to Mars just to stay in a hotel and not leave and just look out their window. Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Why would you come here? Why would Ronnie Cox allow these people to show up? And why keep the little hand thing? They made this big giant structure around this stupid hand thing. Just get rid of it. If that was the one thing that was going to destroy your whole mining world and let everybody know that Mars had oxygen and water, why keep it? He's so stupid. And the whole he did not have a good handle of the situation. And for that, maybe he was playing the banjo too much. I don't know. But okay. That's my ineffectual villain. I was very disappointed in Cohagen.
Well, pace yourself. Don't get too upset.
I got 2 more of these idiots to go.
I think you could have summarized that much easier saying that he couldn't outsmart Quado.
Exactly. Couldn't find Quado. How can you not find Quado?
Garbage pail kids are hard to find, Mike.
I know.
All right, my first list is from a recent movie, Suicide Squad, Mike. The villain Enchantress, played lovingly by Cara Delevingne.
All right.
She's supposed to be this horrible villain at the end of the movie, but all she does, and I've watched this movie a couple times in hindsight.
Wow.
All she does is belly dance. She just gets around and she belly dances around this bunch of crap flying around in the air. I don't know what she's there for, what the problem's going to be with that, what the threat was. The last 20 minutes of the movie are just her. If you want to stop her, all you had to do was just, turn the Shakira off. But I still to this day don't understand what the director or the producers were trying to convey as a threat there with Enchantress.
Wow.
What's equally annoying is, for people our age that are fans of these films or have a lot to, be ashamed of anyway. But if we're going to commit, the Joker is in this movie.
Yeah.
He's there. He's not the greatest Joker, but he was talked about, and the buzz on Jared Leto as him was amazing. He's essentially in this as a cameo. So rather than use the Joker and develop some way for him to be a villain, like the greatest arch villain ever in DC Comics, they decided to let Cara Delevingne belly dance for 20 minutes at the end. And so I didn't see it. So that's my number one. That's my first one.
Well,
Cara Delevingne as Enchantress in Suicide Squad.
Well, Godspeed watching twice for that movie. I still have a headache from the first time I saw it at the theater from the soundtrack.
Not good.
Oh, all right. In no particular order, my second ineffectual villain is from another, let's say, familiar face to our listeners, Twister. And I present you Dr. Jonas, can't remember his last name, but played by Cary Elwes. And he is other than the tornado being kind of the villain in the movie, he is the human villain in the movie who is the scientist, who's kind of there's a backstory there where he's kind of a backstabber, or he's trying to take the glory away from Bill and, his wife. So he has the best equipment and presumably has the best, staff that money can buy. But he's in this movie Twister, he's always following what our ragtag whack pack is doing. Like, he has all this equipment. He has these guys that tell him what to do. Yet he's always, and rightly so, he's following Bill's tingly spidey sense about when tornadoes are coming. And, but why all the equipment? Why the fancy little caravan of vans and trucks? I mean, he's gonna still be come up by Alice in Wonderland or whatever. Dorothy. Jeez, wrong fictional character. But so when he gets his comeuppance at the end, it's no surprise. He's just so stupid. Yeah. The only thing he really does in the movie is do a stupid interview and do menacing looks from the passenger seat of his van that he's going to fly up in the air eventually after poor Eddie. Let's have a moment for Eddie. R.I.P.
Rip.
Yeah.
Rip Eddie.
Yeah. But, the only thing I can say about Dr. Jonas is he has a great death where he, ends up going and spinning up into the tornado. And I did enjoy that. Yeah. So that was really good.
Car does explode too, which is cool.
So there you go. That's my
all right, that's a good one.
Terrible villain. Terrible.
All right. Well, the next one's a little, kind of a deep cut, Mike. But my second ineffectual villain is Gargamel from the Smurfs.
Oh, good one.
Now, I don't know anything about the Smurfs. I don't know what's canon, but I as I understand it, Gargamel created the Smurfs. I don't know why or what happened there in that lab. Lab accident gone astray. But I remember him being the villain. And I was probably a little too old to be watching the Smurfs, but I thought the concept was funny, at least. And, when you're a kid on Saturday mornings, you watch anything. Well, you used to anyway. So how was Gargamel a problem? Why could he not defeat the Smurfs? I mean, just step on him. I mean, he's got the size advantage, Mike. What do you say?
Exactly. I have nothing.
But I don't know if Gargamel couldn't find a way to defeat the Smurfs. Shame on him. So number 2, ineffectual villain goes to Gargamel. And shoot me now. I know,
good gentle listeners, I want you to know there is no rehearsal for the show, and we have no idea who our list items will be and who our characters will end up being. But Justin has just unknowingly segued into my third ineffectual villain, who also is an animated character you might know as Marvin the Martian. I do not know why it's considered, alien intelligence. I don't know why we have any fear of aliens or intelligent life out there when one of the greatest foes to Bugs Bunny is Marvin the Martian, whose major plot is to blow up the Earth. And that's what he keeps telling Bugs. He's going to blow up the Earth. He has a special ray gun. Uh-huh. Oh, yeah, and I think the explosive space modulator or whatever it's called.
Right.
But I guess what bothered me the most about our friend Marvin was his motive to blow up the Earth is to have a better view of Venus. And I remember even thinking as a little kid watching this on Saturday morning thinking, wow, what's wrong with this guy? I mean, not only could Bugs easily outwit him, and just by taking away one of the parts of his machine, and just there you go. And Marvin's whole plane was destroyed. His dog is smarter than him. His dog, I think, was K9, which Gargamel had what? Azrael is his little traveler, and of course Marvin the Martian has this dog. The dog ends up being smarter than Marvin the Martian, but I guess it leads to probably this should, and now I wanted to end it on this. This is what should be the ineffectual villain's like slogan, but this is a phrase from Marvin the Martian was, "Oh dear, back to the drawing board again."
Complain all you want, Mike, but I think he had the last laugh. He's on every T-shirt.
I know,
any
right?
guy ever arrested, or any guy arrested on cops. So I think he got the last laugh. All right. Well, that's a good one, Mike. I like that a lot. Thank you.
Sure.
So my final is a painful pick for me. Mike, I'm a Lord of the Rings fan, nerd. I read the book every year. A collector, huge fan of the movies. But so this one's going to hurt a little bit, but I feel like I have to say it. My final pick for the ineffectual villains are the Nazgul, the Black Riders.
Yes.
And I'll tell you why. Their only existence is to find the ring or to sense the ring, and they never stop, right? You can name about 15 scenes in the trilogy of those movies where the ring is right there.
Yeah. Like
the very first time you see a Black Rider, the Nazgul, they're literally on the road. They're 2 feet away from the ring. And the hobbits outsmart them by hiding under a tree in a ditch. It's right there. Could you not sense the ring?
They didn't have Bill Paxton's Spidey sense.
Exactly. They can't cross rivers.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah. Their first major fight, they're 5 against 1 against Aragorn, and Aragorn wipes them all out, sets them all on fire. They run literally screaming like little girls.
It's like Ed.
They had a chance to kill the hobbits, but they stabbed pillows. They couldn't tell the difference between pillows, feather pillows in a bed. So you got to start to wonder at some point, hey, how effective? And even the Witch King, the King of the Black Riders, gets killed by a woman who's like has a broken shoulder at the end. Remember?
That's right.
He gets stabbed in the face because he gets stabbed in the foot by a little hobbit. Goes down on his knees and then gets stabbed in the face. But so all in all, maybe not that menacing, but they still look way cool. So, but yeah, so this one hurts a little bit, Mike. But I'm going to go with the Nazgul.
Awesome. And can I throw in an honorable mention? Now that you mentioned it,
yeah.
I want to throw in the battle droids from the Star Wars prequels, the 1, 2, 3 movies. Wow,
that's a great one. Yeah,
they were like mannequins. You just shoot them and they fall down, and every limb, every part of them kind of breaks apart. They just kind of collapse. They're just
kind of the robotic version of the Keystone Cops.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I guess my honorable mention would be Boss Hogg.
That's a good one.
From the beloved Dukes of Hazzard show. I don't know why Boss Hogg was a problem, but anyway,
I'm surprised you didn't bring up the puffy-haired Paul Reiser from Aliens. I thought that was for sure going to come out.
In my research for ineffectual villains, he came up on a lot of them, but I couldn't go that way. I couldn't go that way. So
okay, I don't blame you. You got good ones.
All right, so. I think we probably need to stop at some point. Mike, we've been out of this a while. We're both getting very fatigued, and I think we've hit bottom a long time ago. So I just want to remind everybody that you can catch us on all the major podcasting platforms. If you have any questions about our show or what's coming up, I encourage you to check out our social media. You can check us out at Grumpy Nostalgia on Instagram. And if you have any questions about the show, you might want to get in more detail, you can reach out to us by email at nostalgiagrumps@gmail.com. So, Mike, that's going to kind of wrap it up. Good to get back in the saddle, right?
It is, but you know what? I have to go. Somewhere there's a crime happening.
I'd buy that for $1, Mike. All right, so that's going to wrap it up, guys. We want to thank you again for listening, and we're so happy to be back, and thanks for having us. So, for Mike James, this is Justin, and we will see you again next time.